بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه ثم أما بعد. To proceed, inshallah, today we will have Bab al-Ghina, the chapter on Ghina, and in the Zakat session we will talk about the Zakat of currency and the Zakat of debts, and the rulings that pertain to the creditors and the debtors. So first, Bab al-Ghina, the chapter on Ghina. And Ghina is richness. You know, if you just translate it word for word, Ghina is richness. Ghani is rich, right? It has to do with plentifulness, it has to do with affluence. That is the meaning that comes to mind first when you say Ghina, right? But there are certain subtleties here that we will have to discuss. Certainly the Sheikh would not be meaning Ghina as in financial affluence, because that would not be a spiritual station. Although it is not condemnable, but it is not commendable as a spiritual station. It is basically neutral. Like Yahya ibn Mu'az said, Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah one time was asking Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he said to him, which one is better? Al-Ghani al-Shakir am al-Faqir al-Sabir? Al-Ghani al-Shakir, which means the one who's rich and grateful. Al-Faqir al-Sabir, or the one who's poor and patient. Which one is better? So Ibn Taymiyyah gave him like a very smart answer. He said to him, Atqahuma. He said, the more pious out of them. So he meant to say that Ghina and Faqr are inconsequential. Ghina and Faqr are inconsequential. But Yahya ibn Mu'az even put it in sort of a more artistic form. He said Ghina and Faqr, or he put it in a formula. He said, لن يوزن الغنى لن يوضع الفقر أو الغنى في الميزان غدا وإنما يوضع الشكر والصبر. So in the scale, in the hereafter, in the scale, Ghina and Faqr will not be placed in the scale. What will be placed is patience and gratitude. What will be placed is patience and gratitude. And you do need patience and gratitude for both. You need to be patient in Ghina, just as you need to be shakir or grateful in sabr, in faqr, right? Because even the faqir should still be grateful to Allah. And the ghani should be still patient, because ghina is a trial, is a test. And you should show patience with the trial. Anyway, so the Shaykh, although ghina is not commendable, is not condemnable, but it is also not commendable in and of itself in terms of financial affluence. So the Shaykh is not talking about financial affluence here. So what is he talking about? Alaykum salam. He's talking about the inner richness. He's talking about more al-istighna, but just not al-istighna. Al-istighna is freedom from want. Ghina in this sense would be freedom from want. But freedom from want, freedom from need, freedom from want can also be called qana'a, right? Contentment. Like you're content with what you have. But this is not what this is all about. This is about an actual feeling of fulfillment, an actual feeling of inner richness. How do you feel that? If part of it is freedom from want, part of it is freedom from the need to possess any worldly material possessions. And how do you feel? How can you be rich, or you feel rich? You feel fulfilled. أليس الله بكافٍ عبده is the answer. Isn't Allah sufficient for His servant? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said this in Surah Al-Zumar. أليس الله بكافٍ عبده. Isn't Allah sufficient for His servant? Is the answer. So you actually feel fulfilled, you feel rich, not just content with what you have. You feel that you have everything. You feel that you have everything because you have Allah in your life. And then you feel that you have everything. Not just that you're content with what you have in the sense of content with your lack of possessions. You feel that you do possess everything, that you have everything, because من أدرك الله لم يفته شيء. Whoever reaches Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or finds Allah in his life, he did not miss out on anything. Nothing, did he miss out on. So here the Sheikh starts by saying Bab al-Ghina, the chapter on inner richness, and he says, قال الله عز وجل ووجدك عائلا فأغنى. Allah Almighty said, and He found you poor and made you rich. And He found you poor and made you rich. Surah Al-Duha. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is addressing His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. وَوَجَدَكَ عَائِلًا فَأَغْنَى. And He found you poor and He made you rich. And the scholars talked about whether this richness means financial well-being, affluence, or it means spiritual richness, or it means both. And it likely means both, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet ﷺ was an orphan, had lack of means, and although the Prophet ﷺ did not leave much behind, and he left a life of abstinence, asceticism, abstemiousness to a great extent, with moderation, or in moderation. Yet the Prophet ﷺ did not have any need for, or any need of anyone but his Lord, and that is ghina. And he used to say, اقضي عنا الدين وأغننا من الفقر. It was reported by Muslim that part of the dua of the Prophet ﷺ is اقضي عنا الدين وأغننا من الفقر. Relieve us from the burden of debt and make us rich, or end our poverty, make us rich. And in this sense, rich here means not in need of anyone other than you, but also means financial well-being, not in the sense of what we perceive as financial affluence, in the sense of having the basic needs and not needing to ask anyone for any of them. Fulfilling our basic needs and not making us in need of anyone other than you, O Allah. So, اقضي عنا الدين وأغننا من الفقر. So, ووجدك عائلا فأغنى, and He found you poor and made you rich, does mean both the spiritual richness and fulfillment, as well as the financial well-being, in the sense of one having their financial, their basic needs, and not needing, the help or any favor from anyone. So so I wanted to say that I wanted to translate ghina as self-sufficiency, and maybe the document that I sent you was titled self-sufficiency. But then I changed my mind. Although ghina has to do with self-sufficiency, and this will come now, but the proper translation for this particular maqam, for this particular station, would be richness. And it would be the inner richness, because it is not self-sufficiency in the absolute sense of what this word means, as we will discuss now, and it is not simply contentment. Self-sufficiency will not be even appropriate for us as human beings, for us creations. And then on the other side, it is not just contentment, because as I told you, this is not someone who is enduring through lack of means and lack of possessions. This is someone who is truly feeling fulfilled completely, feeling that he has or she has everything because they have Allah in their lives. Then the Sheikh says here, الغنى اسم للملك التام وهو على 3 درجات. الغنى اسم للملك التام, not الملك. الملك would be lordship, kingdom, and monarchy. But الملك is the ownership. الغنى اسم للملك التام وهو على 3 درجات. غنى, richness, refers to complete ownership, and it is of 3 levels. Ghina refers to complete ownership, and it is of 3 levels. So what does he mean by complete ownership here? If he is talking about the ghina, that this is a maqam, that this is a station, that this is a manzil, that he is inviting us to, he's telling us that we don't belong to that station. At the very outset, he's saying, ghina, richness, refers to complete ownership. Can you ever call our ownership complete ownership? Well, it doesn't seem like you can call our ownership of anything complete ownership, because our ownership is contingent and it is temporal. Even if we possess everything we want in this life, and we will never possess everything we want, there will always be more that we, as the Prophet ﷺ said, وَلَا يَمْلَأُ عَيْنَ ابْنَ آدَمَ إِلَّا التُّرَابِ, and nothing will make Ibn Adam's eyes content. Yamla means fill the eyes of Ibn Adam, except dust, when he gets buried, and dust fills his or her eyes. But nothing will make them content. Nothing will be sufficient for them except dust. There will always be more that they seek and look for. So, but even if we have everything we possess, our ownership is incomplete, it is contingent, it is temporal, it is transient. It's contingent upon, being granted whatever we have by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it is contingent upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protecting our possessions, because we have no power to protect our possessions to begin with. So the Sheikh is saying that ghina in the sense of self-sufficiency, and that's why one word could have many inferences, and then some of the inferences would be valid and some of them would be invalid, and you need to just dissect the different inferences and implications of the same word and figure out what is intended here. What is intended here? So ghina as in self-sufficiency, the Sheikh is saying that we don't belong there to begin with. Al-ghina ismun lil-milk at-tam. Ghina, richness, refers to complete ownership. Our ownership is contingent, our ownership is temporal or transient, and complete ownership belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Absolute ownership belongs to Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah Fatir, يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسُ وَأَنْتُمُ الْفُقَرَاءُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَاللَّهُ هُوَ الْغَنِيُّ الْحَمِيدُ. O people, you are the ones in need of Allah. And Allah is the Ghani, which means the only one who is self-sufficient. Al-Hamid, praiseworthy, deserving of praise. So in this sense, ghina as in self-sufficiency does not belong to us. But what belongs to us is sufficiency by and through Allah, sufficiency by Allah, to feel that you have enough because you have Allah. So it is not self-sufficiency, it is sufficiency by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Your servitude, your ubudiyyah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fills you up, makes you feel like you have everything and you have not missed out on anything. Man adrak Allah lam yafuthu shay. Whoever finds Allah in his life, nothing, he has not missed out on anything. So this was an important beginning. The Shaykh is trying to tell us that the ghina that is meant here is the ghina in the sense of the feeling of fulfillment by Allah. The feeling that Allah is sufficient for you not in the sense of self-sufficiency, and not merely contentment. Because keep this in mind. Not merely contentment, not merely acceptance of your condition, not merely freedom from want. Because ghina also is freedom from want. Istighna. استغنيت عن السيارة means I did not have any need for the car anymore. I figured out, I figured out how to walk to work, or I moved next to my job. استغنيت عن السيارة. I don't have a need for the car anymore. And that is, that is greater, when we talk about freedom from want, Roosevelt's speech about the 4 freedoms, freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom from want, freedom from fear. When they talk about freedom from want, they talk about what? They talk about securing the wants. When the people of the world talk about freedom from want, they talk about securing the wants. When the people of spiritual refinement talk about freedom from want, they talk about what? Not wanting them in the first place. Not wanting anything. It's like, so they're like Stoics in some sense. So not wanting, that is the ultimate freedom from want. Because as long as you want, you're dependent on this thing, this whatever thing, could be material or immaterial. It may be material or immaterial. You're depending on this relationship. You're depending on this recognition. You're depending on the love of this or that person. Dependence. Then you're not free from want. And even if you have it now, but you'll always be concerned about keeping it, right or not? But the true ghina or istighna is to not need it, to not be internally dependent on anything, to be detached from all wants, and not be internally dependent on anything for your inner comfort, for your peace, for your spiritual equilibrium, for your emotional equilibrium. You are in a place of complete equilibrium without anything, without any dependence on anything. Because even if you look at the Maslow's hierarchy, it's called hierarchy of what? Maslow's hierarchy of need. As long as you're there, this is your hierarchy of need. You are a needy person. You are, faqir not ghani in that sense. And the hierarchy of need, as we said before, will start with the basic things, food and air and stuff like physical necessities, and then safety, and then sense of belonging and love, and then esteem, recognition, and then self-actualization. But all of this is what? Needs. And you're only rich when you go beyond the whole hierarchy, the whole pyramid, to what? To self-transcendence. That is basically joining the eternal. That's finding the eternal, the first and the last, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God, the creator of the universe. So you will always be needy as long as you're dependent on any of... It does not mean that as a human being you will not have a need. You will have a physical need. You will have a physical need for food. But it means that your inner equilibrium is not dependent on anything in the exterior world. You feel fulfilled by and through your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now you may say, but was Roosevelt right or wrong when, or anyone who considers freedom from want to be through securing those wants? Is there a conflict here? Like if you are in a position where you're in charge of public policy, or is there a conflict between economic development and spiritual refinement here? Because if you say to an economist, ghina, or freedom from want, is by not wanting, for an economist that sounds like ridiculous, right? Because it's about securing the wants, making sure that people have their needs. And you don't want an economist to think otherwise. When he's thinking economics, you want them to secure the needs of the people. So that's the difference between public policy and spiritual refinement, and there is no conflict. Because on an individual level, for a spiritual refinement, you do want the people to be independent of those wants or those needs, not dependent on them for their inner comfort or their equilibrium. And that is when there is this fine line between, state and in public policy and spiritual development. See, when Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, after the Battle of Shakhab, when he entered Damascus after the Battle of Shakhab, and he's the one who recruited them, and he's the one who fought along with Sultan al-Nasir ibn Qalawun. And that's, even though Nasir ibn Qalawun put him in jail, but he fought along against the Tatars. And he's the one who motivated Sultan al-Nasir Muhammad ibn Qalawun, rahimahullah, to come out of Egypt and fight the Tatars and not basically leave Damascus abandoned. And then when he went back to Damascus, al-Nasir, and he feared that Sultan al-Nasir may fear from him, because of his celebrity, popularity, because of people's love for him and so on, he may fear that he may compete with him for power. So Ibn Taymiyyah said to him, what? Do you remember? أنا رجل ملة لا رجل دولة. أنا رجل ملة لا رجل دولة. I'm a clergyman, not a statesman. I'm a clergyman, not a statesman. Is that separation of church and state? To some extent, yes. Is it separation of religion and state? No. And there is a fine line here that you have to understand in order for you to have proper sort of perspective in this regard. That's separation of church and state to some extent, but it is not separation of religion and state. Religion does inform our choices. It does inform our value system, and based on that, it does inform our choices, even in public policy. So there is no conflict here between spiritual development or spiritual refinement and economic development. These are two different things. And people who are in charge of economic development may be spiritually refined. But when they are planning, ghina to them means prosperity, means to secure people's needs when they are in that sphere. Because the word ghina could mean so many different things. Because when Allah said, وَوَجَدَكَ عَائِلًا فَأَغْنَى, and Allah found you poor and He made you rich, it did mean also financial well-being. It did mean securing your needs. I secured your needs so that you become independent of others, independent of other creations. You're not reliant on other creations for your needs, because I secured your needs, because I gave you enough in terms of your basic needs. So then the Sheikh says, الدرجة الأولى, and now he will talk about the three different levels of غنى. He says, الدرجة الأولى غنى القلب وهو سلامته من السبب ومسالمته للحكم وخلاصه من الخصومة. The first level is the richness of the heart, and it is about clearance of reliance on the causes. To be clear of the causes meaning to be clear of relying on the causes. سلامته من السبب, clearance of reliance on the causes. As we said before, we must engage the causes. We must always engage the causes. According to the nawamis that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created, the natural processes according to the universal order that Allah inculcated in those causes. If I punch this board, it will make a sound. That is basically an efficient cause resulting in the expected outcome. If Allah did not mean for it to make a sound, if Allah did not mean for it to move, it would have not moved and it would have not made a sound. But you're engaging the causes because most of the time, how many times did the fire not burn someone? Very rarely. How many times did the knife did not cut someone? Exerting sufficient force and so on. Very rarely. So you're engaging the causes, but your heart is completely reliant on the causer. Your heart is completely reliant on the causer, as we said before so many times. But it is important that your heart is not reliant on the cause. It is important that when you're at work, you're not reliant on this job for your rizq. You're not afraid that your supervisor, you're not afraid of doing something right, lest your supervisor fires you or this or that. You're not afraid of conducting yourself honestly if your supervisor would require any sort of suboptimal, unethical practice. You would not be afraid of saying the truth. You would not certainly prudently. You do everything prudently and wisely. But in other words, you don't really feel that it is this job that is providing for you. It is Allah who is providing for you. And that is when you become clear of the causes, meaning here the efficient causes, the direct cause, the immediate cause. Because keep in mind that Allah is the first and the final cause. And then he said, وَمُسَلَمَتُهُ لِلْحُكْمِ, being at peace with the decrees, And those decrees are your shar'i decrees. Being at peace with your shar'i decrees is by what? Conformity. Being at peace with the shar'i decrees is by conformity. And whether or not you can comprehend them, you conform, you comply, you submit. And then you try to comprehend. But if we are quite sure that this came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is a matter of consensus or this or that, then the only thing that is expected of us is what? Compliance, conformity. That is musalamatuhu lil-hukm. It is basically being at peace with the decrees. And then you have the universal decrees, not the shar'i decrees, but the shar'i decrees would be the commands and prohibitions. And then you have the universal decrees, and being at peace with the universal decrees is by what? Acceptance, with contentment. But does it mean also resistance? As long as they have not befallen you, you resist them. As Umar radiallahu anhu said, that we resist al-qadar by al-qadar. Resist al-qadar by al-qadar. When he was told, are you afraid of the plague? Are you staying out of the city because you're afraid of the plague? Are you afraid of Allah's qadar? He said, do you think that you could run away from Allah's qadar? He said, yes. Why would I enter into a city that has plague? I would resist the qadar by qadar. But once it had befallen you, then you accept it with contentment while trying to mitigate the effects as much as possible. Then the last one is وَخَلَاصُهُ مِنَ الْخُصُومَةِ, and riddance from antagonism. وَخَلَاصُهُ مِنَ الْخُصُومَةِ, and all of this is about the qalb. The qalb, in order for the qalb to be ghani or to feel ghina, and all of this is for you to feel ghina. To feel ghina, سَلَامَتُهُ مِنَ السَّبَبِ, you're not dependent on the causes, immediate, efficient causes. You're dependent on the causer. The second is you are at peace with the decrees, all the decrees, commands and prohibitions, you comply, sickness, death of loved one, getting the job that you wanted, losing it, getting into the major that you liked, getting kicked out of it, whatever it is that, whatever decrees that befall you, you are at peace with the decrees, working your best, doing your best, and working for your well-being and your welfare, but being completely at peace with the decrees that had befallen you. And then riddance from antagonism. Antagonism here, khusuma here, or antagonism here is that someone who feels ghani by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who feels that Allah is really enough for me. أَلَيْسَ اللَّهُ بِكَافٍ عَبْدًا. Isn't Allah sufficient for His servant? And then the answer, yarhamkumullah, the answer to this would be, answer. Yeah, Bala, good. But you could say yes as well. I was expecting a yes. Anyway, Bala is correct. It should not be na'am. But anyway, so أَلَيْسَ اللَّهُ بِكَافٍ عَبْدًا. Isn't Allah sufficient for His servant? You say yes, Allah is sufficient for me. And in this case, if you feel that Allah is sufficient for you, then will you be too competitive? You'll be competitive. But you'll be too competitive in the sense of excessively competitive with others, antagonistic. You know, I always say that a Muslim competes in parallel lines with others, not intersecting. You know, it's not like I have to wish you delay or impediment or anything to get ahead. No, I will just compete in parallel lines. I will try to actualize my potential and get the most out of myself and compete in parallel lines, not in intersecting lines, you know. So I wish you well. You know, Umar radiallahu anhu did not wish for Abu Bakr to get behind so that he can get ahead. He just wanted to compete. He wanted to get ahead. He wanted to actualize his potential. So here you will not be antagonistic, riddance from antagonism, and people will recognize that once you have this ghina inside you by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. People will recognize that you're not antagonistic. You're not competing for recognition. You're not competing for power. You're not competing for anything. You want to actualize your potential, but you don't wish them any harm. But is a Muslim never antagonistic? Didn't the Prophet ﷺ used to say, وَبِكَ خَاصَمْتُ? And I oppose, I resist, I struggle against others, for you, by you. What is this struggle? What is this mukhasama? This is a mukhasama for Allah, by Allah. So if your mukhasama is for Allah, by Allah, this mukhasama is not only permissible, but required. It is required for you to struggle against others for the perfect cause of divine justice, for the excellent cause of divine justice. Isn't it required? Yes, it is required. There is so much evil in the world, and if you don't antagonize the evil for the cause of divine justice, if you see someone sort of poking a child's eyes out, or like see someone like beating, like if you go out in the street now and you see someone beating a little, like a man beating a woman in the street, and you'll say, I am not antagonistic, I don't antagonize people, I'm a pacifist, I will not, I'm minding my business, I am at peace with my creations, he is part of the creations, or this aggressor is part of Allah's creations, I'm at peace with everybody. Well, then you're not at peace with the divine cause. You could be at peace with the creations, but you're not at peace with the Creator in this case. Because the Creator requires of you in this case to intervene. Okay, so خلاصه من الخصومة, riddance from antagonism, is not in the absolute sense. It is riddance from antagonism that is caused by greed, excessive competition, and so on. But not antagonism for Allah, by Allah. Then the Sheikh said, وَالدَّرَجَةُ الثَّانِيَةُ غِنَى النَّفْسِ. The second level is the richness of the nafs. It says here in NAF, but it's meant nafs, N-A-F-S. And it is about, and the Sheikh starts to talk about ghina al-nafs. But which one is higher, the deeds of the heart or the deeds of the nafs? The deeds of the heart are higher than the deeds of the nafs. So why did the Sheikh here made the ghina of al-nafs in the second level, not the first level? And the first level was the ghina of the heart. And I have it in the footnote. Because the heart is the most rebellious of the nafs's subordinates. The heart is the most rebellious of the subordinates of the nafs. And if she can have good control over the heart, she will have good control over everything else. So once if the heart can have good control over the nafs, the heart then is in full control. So ghina al-heart, and it is basically there is overlap. And it is sort of a mutual relationship. But since the nafs is the most rebellious, now if you have control over your nafs, control over your ego, then the road is paved for your ascendance to the third level. So let us talk about the second level to see if we can get to the third level. We just need to secure our place in the first level most of the time. But he says the second level is the richness of the nafs, and it is about istiqamatha ala al-marghub, its consistent pursuit of the final goal. Istiqamatha means straightness. Here in this context, it means consistent pursuit. To be, straight on your pursuit of the final goal. The final goal, al-marghub, from raghba, final goal is always Allah. If your final objective is always Allah. So istiqamatha ala al-marghub, its consistent pursuit of the final goal. وَسَلَامَتْهَا مِنَ الْمَسْخُوط, its clearance of abominations. Abominations here mean what? Sakhata. Tasakhut is what? To resent. It's about something that is disliked, something that is resented. Maskhut, basically, it's an adjective in the passive voice from sukht, which means resentment or disliking. Al-maskhut is all abominations, everything that deserves to be disliked. And in this context, what is maskhut? Maskhut is Maslow's hierarchy of need, which means what? Lowly pursuits. Anything short of self-transcendence. Anything short of, the pursuit of the eternal, the al-awwal wal-akhir, al-zahir wal-batin. Your pursuit of al-awwal wal-akhir, al-zahir wal-batin is the only thing that should be, a goal for you, or an ultimate goal for you. Any lowly pursuits, any pursuits short of this, other than this, are maskhut. Okay, so what if you want to propose to someone? Aren't you seeking something short of the eternal, short of the final goal? Or you want to graduate with a good GPA, or you want to get a good job, a good place. All of this is maskhut. Well, it would be maskhut if it competes with al-marghub. If it competes with the final goal, it certainly would be maskhut. But it would not be maskhut if it does not compete with the final goal. It would not, those lower pursuits, and they are lower. Keep in mind, anything short of, your connection with the eternity, with the eternal, with al-azali al-abadi, the first without beginning, the last without ending, is a lower pursuit. But those lower pursuits are not condemnable They are often commendable if they are not competing with your final pursuit or ultimate goal. And then وَبَرَأَتْهَا مِنَ الْمُرَاءَةِ, it's clearance of ostentation. Because once you have been consistent in your pursuit of the final goal, and once you have rid yourself of the abominations of the lowly pursuits, or the lower pursuits, not necessarily always lowly, but dependence on the lower pursuits, or basically allowing the lower pursuits to compete in your heart with the ultimate pursuit. Once you have done this, then the struggle now will be about making sure that all of this is really for Allah, not for anything else. And then that's why he said it's clearance of ostentation. Clearance of ostentation. And then he said, وَالدَّرَجَةُ الثَّالِثَةُ الْغِنَى بِالْحَقِّ وَهُوَ عَلَى ثَلَاثِ مَرَاتِبٍ. The third level is sufficiency by the true one. Al-Haqq could mean what? Truth or the true one. Haqq could be the truth or the true one. So Allah is Al-Haqq. You could translate this as Allah is the truth and Allah is the true one. And in this sense, the true one, because He is the only one who is Qayyum, Qa'im bi-amri nafsihi, self-sufficient, is not, in need of anyone. His existence is not contingent. That is why and we gave the examples before, because he's talking here, he usually mentions al-haqq in the last level, which is the level of self-annihilation, level of fana, because he's trying to tell you, you're almost unreal. You're almost unreal. The light of the candle next to the light of the sun vanishes. Not existentially, but almost. It's almost not there. So he says, الدرجة الثالثة الغنى بالحق وهو على ثلاث مراتب. The third level is sufficiency by the true one, and it is of three levels. المرتبة الأولى شهود ذكره إياك. المرتبة الأولى شهود ذكره إياك. The first level is considering His remembrance of you. شهود ذكره إياك. Considering His remembrance of you. والثانية دوام مطالعة أوليته. The second is observing His firstness, His antecedents. So every time your heart becomes reliant, dependent on something other than Allah, then remember that this thing at one point it did not exist. Just to go back, it is basically the parable of throwing the blanket. Throw the blanket. Throw the blanket on your surroundings. Everything that you observe around you. All of your lower pursuits. Just throw the blanket and extend that blanket. Keep on going back. 100 years, 1,000 years back, 1 million years. Keep on going back to the point where كان الله ولم يكن شيء. Allah was there and there was nothing else. That is awaliyatihi, His antecedents, His firstness. And then realize that all of those contingencies, all of those temporal existences came to existence from what? From nothingness. It's called ex nihilo. Nothingness. They came to existence from complete nothingness. And in this case, you will realize that your heart should really not be dependent on anything that was at one point Adam, nothing. And then he said, وَالثَّالِثَ الْفَوْزُ بِوُجُودِهِ. So the second is observing His firstness, antecedents, and then you say to yourself, أَلَيْسَ اللَّهُ بِكَافٍ عَبْدًا. Isn't Allah sufficient for His servant? And then الثالث الْفَوْزُ بِوُجُودِهِ. The third is the ultimate success of finding Him, finding your Lord. Basically, feeling the presence of your Lord all the time. Feeling the company of your Lord all the time. That you are in the company of your Lord, in the presence of your Lord, fi hadrati mulak, all the time. And if you do have this feeling, then it will fill you up, it will be sufficient for you, it will spare you of all need for anything else short of him, other than him, Azza wa Jal. Part of the Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah wrote a poem on the back cover of a tafsir book, and when Ibn Qayyim asked for it, so he sent it to him. And Ibn Qayyim is the one who transmitted this poem. It says, أنا الفقير إلى رب البريات أنا المسيكين في مجموع حالاتي أنا الظلوم لنفسي وهي ظالمتي والخير إن يأتينا من عنده ياتي لا أستطيع لنفسي جلب منفعة ولا عن النفس لي دفع المضرات. But later in the poem he says, والفقر لي وصف ذات لازم أبدا كما الغنى أبدا وصف له ذاتي. So it's a very beautiful poem. It's a longer poem, but he says, I am the one in need to the Lord of the creations. أنا الفقير إلى رب البريات. أنا المسيكين. مسيكين is diminutive from مسكين. تصغير من مسكين. The little مسكين. I am the little مسكين. في مجموع حالاتي, in all of my conditions. أنا الظلوم لنفسي وهي ظالمتي. I am the one who transgressed myself, and my nafs transgressed me. So I transgress her and she transgresses me. وهي ظالمتي والخير إن يأتينا من عنده ياتي. And if good comes to us from our Lord, then it comes. Then only then it comes. You know, we have لا أستطيع لنفسي جلب منفعة. I can't bring about any benefit for myself. I can't procure any benefit for myself. ولا عن النفس لي دفع المضرات. Nor can I spare her of any harm. And then later he says, وَالْفَقْرُ لِي وَصْفُ ذَاتٍ لَازِمٌ أَبَدًا. You know, the wasf of that is the attribute of the essence. It is the essential attribute of the essence, not an incidental attribute. Attribute of the essence means you can never be detached from it. وَالْفَقْرُ لِي وَصْفُ ذَاتٍ لَازِمٌ أَبَدًا. And poverty and need are my essential attributes, the attributes of my essence. Binding forever, everlasting. كما الغنى وصف له كما الغنى أبدا وصف له ذاتي. Just like غنى, self-sufficiency, is his, the Lord's, essential attribute of the essence. So, can we be ghani in the sense of self-sufficient? Never. Can we be ghani in the sense of fulfillment, feeling that we are fulfilled, by our Lord? Absolutely. Does this ghina make us free from want? It should make us free from want. Is it just about contentment? No. It is about more than contentment. Because if you found your Lord, if you من وجد الله من أدرك الله لم يفته شيء, then there is nothing that you missed out on. And in this case, it's not just about being content with lack of possessions. You have everything you want. So you are truly rich, truly free from want. قولوا قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. We will take 10 minutes.